Unitarian Universalists pride ourselves on looking at life with clear eyes and a rational bent of mind, and on thinking that the spiritual part of life is all of our lives. Since we live, learn, cope, grow, make meaning, and love from the moment of our birth until we take our last breaths, those last years of our lives, with the adjustments, difficulties, and blessings they have, are really important to all of us. Last week we talked about choices in dying, and I know that many of you were glad to hear this issue raised and frankly discussed. This morning, some of our members who've been digging into issues of aging will speak about these important issues, how we live and make our lives significant until it comes our time to die.
Our reading this morning is a number of quotations from the book Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. Being mortal is about the struggle to cope with the constraints of our biology, with the limits set by genes and cells and flesh and bone. We've been wrong about what our job is in medicine. We think it is to ensure health and survival, but really it is to enable well-being. And well-being is about the reasons one wishes to be alive.
The body's decline creeps like a vine. Day to day, the changes can be imperceptible. You adapt. Then something happens that finally makes it clear that things are no longer the same.
Studies find that as people grow older, they interact with fewer people and concentrate more on spending time with family and established friends. They focus on being rather than doing, and on the present more than the future.
In a study led by Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen, she and her team tracked the emotional experiences of nearly 200 people over years of their lives. Her findings were unequivocal. Far from growing unhappier, people reported more positive emotions as they aged. They became less prone to anxiety, depression, and anger. They experienced trials and more moments of poignancy, that is, of positive and negative emotions mixed together. But overall, they found living to be a more emotionally satisfying and stable experience as time passed, even as old age narrowed the lives that they led. The question arose, why do we take so long to be rather than do and focus on the present? Carstensen's explanation was perspective, a personal sense of how finite your time on this earth is. Perspective matters. Cultural and age differences did not matter. How we seek to spend our time depends on how much time we think we have.
We all seek a cause beyond ourselves in order to feel that life is worth living. We all prefer to maintain a sense of autonomy, and you don't need to sacrifice autonomy just because you need help in your life. The battle of being mortal is the battle to maintain the integrity of one's life, to avoid becoming so diminished or dissipated or subjugated that who you are becomes disconnected from who you were or who you want to be.
Good morning. When the Sunday Explorations meeting decided to discuss Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, I knew I wanted to join the conversation. I had read Dr. Gawande's book and found it to be spot on in so many ways. First of all, during my long career as a hospital pharmacist, I have often seen the outrageous waste of money, resources, and even loss of dignity that has been and still is a big part of our healthcare industry. You might even call it the institutionalization of death and dying. Over the centuries, since the Renaissance, we in Western culture have become more and more enamored with the rational and scientific way of doing things, so much so that we often forget that technology must be shepherded by good judgment. There's a tendency to expect life to be repeatedly prolonged until that last gasp when technology, not life, has reached its limit. The time has come to put our values about what is a good life and what is a good death back into the equation. Ultimately, I believe this can result in better quality of life, less suffering, better goodbyes, and more cost savings than anyone can imagine. That is why when we decided to pursue the topic of what we came to call self-directed aging, I thought, I'm in. What is meant by self-directed aging? It includes researching housing options and health care and legal matters, finding ways for maintaining positive attitudes, and staying engaged in life. It means developing the means to exercise freedom and autonomy so as to live on our own terms. We soon realized that aging is not something one should try to do alone. Living and dying is a normal cycle, and we are, all of us, terminal right now. Our job then is to make the most of it, to keep it good till the end. Exactly what that means is very personal and ultimately spiritual for each individual. But we need a lot of help with this from our friends, family, professionals, and our institutions. Our church can help a lot by feeding the Spirit, accompanying us on the journey, helping us with spiritual crises, and helping us mark life's milestones. This is a big part of why we form congregations and spiritual communities. However, there are times when the church can also be the key to a very practical problem, something such as transportation to and from church events. And many of the larger UU churches have developed a network of volunteer drivers who provide rides to church for members who can no longer drive due to physical or age-related, medical or age-related inability. Are we willing to do that here? Another very practical measure that is already being discussed is placing an AED, automatic external defibrillator, on the church campus and training as many members as possible in its use and in the CPR technique called compression-only CPR. You will be hearing more about this project soon. I hope that today's presentations will get you thinking about how we, our families, and our church can work to empower each of us to navigate the later stages of life in ways that enhance the experience and reflect our deepest values. Thank you.
Good morning. I moved to Albuquerque 6 years ago when I retired from Florida. This required an adventuresome spirit and many investigative trips to the region for about 10 years before I retired. I'm 71, single, with no children, and my family lives in Pennsylvania and New York. And I hike. I coordinate the UU hiking group, and I want you to know that I'm good for a 5-mile hike of moderate difficulty. Sometimes people look at me and think I'm frail, and I want to tell them that I just completed the 4th of July Canyon Loop twice in 1 week. To make sure I can continue to hike, I wear orthotics and do ankle exercises every morning. Another way I'm taking care of myself is researching options for housing as I grow older. Now, what I hope is that I can stay in my own home as long as possible, ideally to my homegoing, as Zen teacher Peter Matheson called his dying. I have been participating in the self-directed aging group that grew out of our discussion of being mortal this past January, and to learn more about Albuquerque housing options in the event I need them. Visiting and learning about alternative housing arrangements and their cost, from independent to assisted, has been a sort of warm activity should I need to move out of my home down the road. This has helped me feel more confident that I'll be able to make informed and autonomous choices about my living arrangements. Another way I'm taking care of myself is that I have a durable power of attorney for health care document and an advance directive or living will. I have designated my nephew as my agent to carry out my instructions in the event of an incurable and irreversible condition, in which case I do not want my life prolonged. I also specify that I do not want artificial nutrition or hydration at the end. I would want hospice if I need it. An advance directive or living will is a critical document for every one of us to have because accidents and sudden illness have no respect for age. You may go online and search for New Mexico Living Will. For those who do not have family or who don't trust their family with end-of-life instructions, a great deal of anxiety can result about who to trust. There are organizations to help. One in Albuquerque is Decades, which offers elder care services and acts in good faith under a court-appointed conservatorship. One friend in our UU lunch bunch died recently and unexpectedly. She had made all of the necessary decisions and arrangements with Decades. She carefully and thoughtfully exercised her autonomy regarding her end-of-life decisions. And when she died peacefully but unexpectedly, it was a great comfort to her friends that she was so prepared. Retaining autonomy does not mean that one is alone in making health care and other important decisions. One is fortunate indeed to have an advocate or advocates. Ideally, one has a close friend or friends or family members nearby, in addition to one's distant family and physician who wants to be an advocate. The advocate can offer emotional support and serve as a sounding board when decisions are being considered. They are available to accompany one to important doctor appointments or to visit during hospitalizations and to ensure one's end-of-life instructions will be carried out. Social connections nurture and support one's autonomy. They can be formed in community groups, with neighbors, and in various small group opportunities within the First Unitarian community. My 6 years participating in the lunch bunch after church many Sundays and the monthly hiking group have fostered friendships. I have gotten to know people I can reach out to who care about me. One area where retaining autonomy might be compromised is if one can no longer drive. Many people cannot drive the last 10 years of their lives. I discuss this with age peers occasionally and say, well, hiring a taxi or a regular driver is less expensive than maintaining an auto. I feel very grateful, happy, and immensely fortunate to have envisioned my life in the North Valley of Albuquerque and to be living it. Plus, I am able to travel about to see and enjoy the monumental landscapes of New Mexico and the region, often with visitors from the Northeast. This is a joyous approach to my homegoing.
Connecting elders to each other and to younger people is a highly practical strategy for improving the lives of people of all ages. Therefore, it is important for elders, adults, and younger people to live near each other. The communication and communicate with has been part of our lives, so we can then better understand each other. This is one of the main reasons of my choosing to stay in my own home. This really huge decision hasn't happened overnight. My thoughts and feelings have been greatly aided by my fellow participants here at First U as we study and ably discuss. This lively group meets the first Sunday of each month with Angela Merkett's expert guidance. It's been these discussions, along with many chats with my partner Peggy and other family members that has helped me to present and resolve to stay in my own home. In 1980, I purchased my home in 1989, and since then, I've been busy at work, reshaping it to fit my present needs. I dearly love being connected to my xeriscape, initially designed by Jim Lewis, who is also one of First Unitarian's early xeriscape designers, which can be really noticed during our Easter sunrise. At home, my surroundings to the east allow me to observe hummingbirds flitting over the meadow of blue grama as they approach and argue as to who will have access to the feeders. Also, the bees at the newly created pollinator garden, with many other species flying in and out of my apricot and 70-foot Arizona cypress tree. A workshop that I created flanks the meadow and allows me to view Mother Nature through its wide open door. The following path that surrounds the meadow has been a blessing, whether as a path to recover from surgeries or simply viewing the rosy glow of the Sandia at sunset, or perhaps a moon rising. I can also hear and view the Albuquerque transit bus on San Mateo Boulevard just beyond my backdoor neighbors, which is an easy connection to other adventures. And my view to the west captures my neighbors walking by. Many are together with students on their way to Whittier Elementary School at the end of my block. This gathering of neighbors is called a pita bus, which means a foot or foot bus in Italian. This view of the multi-generations reflects my present realization that in past years, no one had to think about fostering intergenerational relationships because such relationships were exquisitely normal, as the dense family clusters that remain were ties to a single community for many generations. Older people will recognize this as the home place, which retained an important place in American iconography. Few of us live this way today. When confronted with the facts regarding our society's radical and destructive practice of age segregation, most people respond with nostalgia. This appeal to kinfolk and tradition might feel good, but it also disregards the realities of contemporary American society. So from my home, it is my intention to become less isolated by connecting with my neighborhood. I've just recently become a block captain and engaged with my Parkland Hills Neighborhood Association. This past Tuesday evening, I and others came together to learn and discuss, with the help of the Neighborhood Association board members, Whittier Elementary School principals, a community outreach coordinator with APD Community Policing Council, and a contact person from North Campus Community Project. This community project is part of the Village to Village movement in the U.S., and it is located just east of UNM, situated at the corner of Lomas and Girard, which is also the location of First Congregational Church, whose members have helped with its formation. Those in this community help the elderly groom their yards during the spring and fall, sign up to help those needing to have transportation or small home repairs, have created a community garden with the help of our County Commissioner Stebbins, installed many stations for libraries on a pedestal, and offer a website and monthly newsletter for additional and enhanced communication. This group and its contact person plan to support the core group of those interested in pursuing the idea of becoming a village in Parkland Hills neighborhood. Also, just this month, 2 founding members of the Village in a Village in Corrales joined with our self-directed aging discussion. I refer to such happenings of people coming together as goosebump times. If you have any questions or suggestions, please see me in the social hall after this service.
When the Sunday Explorations group decided, after studying being mortal, to do further research under the umbrella of self-directed aging, 3 of us decided that we wanted to emphasize the importance of attitudes and staying involved in life despite challenges of disabilities or restrictions. It happens that all 3 of us acquired significant disabilities fairly early in life and learned to acknowledge and accept them, and to adapt our lives accordingly without either giving up or denying reality. We're here today as proof of those decisions. Janelle Campbell, who is behind me, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at age 23 and was told that she'd be in a wheelchair within a year, that 90% of women with MS have that immediate outcome. She said she'd be in the 10%. The doctor said, "What 10%? Janelle replied, "Well, if 90% are in a wheelchair, that means 10% are not, and I'm going to be in the 10%. Many years later, as you can see, she's still not in a wheelchair. She completed her education, married, raised a family, and had a long and successful career as a teacher and tutor. She's always been involved in serving others and in social justice issues. Now that she's retired, she continues to volunteer in our after-school tutoring program and has many other activities, including traveling and learning French." Christine Hall, who is not here today because she went to Tucson to meet her new great-grandson. She is usually accompanied by her service dog, Tessa. She began to lose her sight in her 20s. She regained some. She was legally blind by her 30s and lost all sight in 1986, 30 years ago. Not letting vision loss at such an early age stop her, she went to college, completed her degree, and had a long career of teaching blind skills to other blind people. She is now retired, but still serves on the Board of Regents of the New Mexico School for the Blind, among other things. She successfully raised a family and still leads a full and independent life, including hobbies, social activities, and travel. She enjoys life. My own story is not as dramatic as Janelle's or Christine's. I knew that I might get age-related macular degeneration in my 80s due to a strong family history of it. But I had a positive role model in my great-aunt who lived to almost 103, and I knew it was important to stay positive and involved. I did not expect, however, to lose the central vision in my left eye at 52, in the middle of my career as an addiction therapist. It did change some aspects of my life and my career, including restricting my driving, but it got me involved in blind issues and a focus on various acquired disabilities. Being able to maintain a positive attitude, enjoy life, and accept the limitations I do have, especially as I get older, is an important part of my identity and my spirituality. As we explored our own life experiences and the possibilities for involvement in life in our community, we found that there are endless opportunities in Albuquerque. There are many senior centers, multi-generational centers, meal sites, and countless community groups, churches, and volunteer opportunities, as well as ways to travel despite physical disabilities. There are some barriers to remaining involved, such as physical mobility, lack of personal connections as friends die or move away, safety concerns about night driving, going out at night or going to unfamiliar places, and inaccessibility, such as steps, poor lighting, and transportation. The biggest barrier of all, however, is difficulty asking for help. This is a cultural as well as a personal trait. Sometimes others would be glad to help and even offer, but people are reluctant to ask. There is also a need for non-disabled people to learn about disabilities because anything can happen to anyone at any age. Sometimes well-meaning friends or family urge a person to become less involved in certain things, especially if it involves inconvenience on their part. Or they may urge a person to continue activities in which they're no longer interested or with which they need assistance. Older people should not be expected to adapt their lives for someone else's peace of mind. And because transportation is such a big issue, it deserves a special study, and that's our next challenge. However, it's important to examine one's own attitudes about taking risks, about being willing to try new things and learning new ways, adapting our lives to new situations, and developing a strong sense of humor so that we do live our whole lives.
That is a lot of things to think about. But for many of us, our elder years are going to be something like 20% of our lives. This is a new thing in this society. It took my parents' generation by surprise, but there's no excuse for that anymore. This generation of elders and the next generation of elders and the next gets to plan, not only for their active retirement, but for their truly elderly years, which can be rich with growth, love, friendship, and activities, and a way into the time in which we will need help with our affairs and with advancing technology and with our aging bodies. These brave folks have started a conversation. I hope you'll continue it with them in the social hall after the service, and may this conversation at large continue in good health.